So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to knock out this last poem.
This last poem.
Fantastic. Okay, so it's by Komunyakaa, and it's called Requiem. And for those of you who don't know, like me before coming into this, I had heard the word Requiem before. Not really sure what it meant.
SAT word.
SAT
maybe.
word. Why not? So, what it actually means, it's a kind of religious service, usually in like Catholicism, you know, a Catholic mass, in honor of someone, or in honor of like the person that has passed away, or in honor of something that is no longer there. So keep that in mind as we go through this. The poem starts off, the strong unholy winds whiplashed over the sold-off marshlands. However, in the fourth line, or I guess the fifth, if you count the one-word line to start it, talks about the Crescent City was already shook down to repilings. So we had to do some research, and the Crescent City is actually referring to New Orleans. And the reason New Orleans. So the reason that New Orleans is called the Crescent City, actually, where it got this nickname, was when it was originally founded by the French. It was built on like a crook in the Mississippi River that formed a crescent right where they were going to build the city. And from that point on, it got the nickname the Crescent City, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
So, kind of taking that, and we go back up to the second line when I said the strong, unholy, high winds. New Orleans has a very strong religious base, you know.
Voodoo.
A little bit of voodoo mixed in there.
Voodoo.
And I mean, even their football team is the Saints. So, I mean, if that gives you an idea of the culture down there. So, the unholy winds is not only a devastating storm, but it's also kind of a slap in the face to the culture.
Yeah.
And now that we know that it's New Orleans, we have the unholy winds, and then they were whiplashed over the sold-off marshlands and eaten back to a sigh of salt water. So we're kind of getting into a big storm, New Orleans, putting the pieces together, and basically we're talking about Hurricane Katrina, which is awesome.
Katrina.
Well,
yeah.
We figured that out, which is kind of cool.
That's awful.
Still up at the top of the poem, Komunyakaa does a great job of personifying the city, and says the Crescent City was already shook down to her pilings, her floating ribs, her spleen and backbone. So now that gives you the picture of the water flowing through the city streets with, you know, just foundations of buildings, you know, signs, people, just everything is just the backbone, you know, the spleen of the city is all just there floating along and just completely taken apart. You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
These next two?
This next line is kind of, I guess, I feel like it's key. It says, left trembling in her old world facades and postmodern lethargy, lost to waterlogged memories and quitclaim deeds. And earlier it said sold off marshland. So I feel like Komunyakaa, growing up in Louisiana and probably near New Orleans, I can't remember the name of the town or city, but he's kind of resentful of this modernizing of this beautiful city, and I think he feels like this storm was meant in a holy or an unholy way to kind of cleanse the city of its to cleanse the city or like baptize the city of its modern sins.
Ooh.
So I mean, sold off marshlands could be like, you know, you've sold out to these big corporations to, you know, build this city, but this was meant to be something more. It's supposed to be a cultural staple.
That's awesome.
So,
going off of that, wow. Yeah, no. So you come down here. A few lines later, it's talking about the Choctaw and the Chickasaw, which were two tribes that were originally in the area, and it says that their last ghost songs were long gone. And if we're talking about this poem now as kind of like the cleansing of the city back to its original roots, it kind of shows that this city's not meant to be all this modernized and these big buildings, like Lauren had said, but it's meant to be appreciated and worshipped like the Choctaw and the Chickasaw had originally done so. And then he goes on to even talk about the oak and the sweet gum leaves, you know, the beautiful foliage around the area.
Absences of echoing cries of birds, just another emotional kind of like resentment of them getting rid of nature.
Turning into a city and, you know, paved paradise to put up a parking lot.
It's awful.
Quoting a song right there. Um, so let's see. Oh, we go back. This isn't necessarily about the physical cleansing of the city, but this is kind of along the spiritual lines, where it says, while the believers hummed "Precious Lord" in Deep River, as the horsehair plaster walls galloped along with the surge. So you have all these walls of the buildings just being completely washed away and galloping along with the surge of water. So as they're being torn away, the people are going back to their religion and singing their old folklore songs of "Precious Lord" "Precious Lord" and "Deep River." So that's bringing back what the whole city was founded on. What the culture of the city is. Just that kind of family religion. Just the small town feel that's being turned into a big city.
Yeah, I think in the moment. This obviously was an awful catastrophe, but I mean, looking back on it, the way Komunyakaa views it, it's a poetic, saving of a city that had such a cultural,
It was
identity.
A cultural hub.
It was a hub for just, I'm lost. I'm at a loss for words.
I got you.
But I mean, it was obviously extremely important, and he looked at this as a cleansing, like you said, in religious views.
And now, kind of the last thing that I want to go into is that in the third to last line, he talks about Bacchus, who is Bacchus is another name for the Roman god of wine, and but not only is he the god of wine, he's also the god of religious ecstasy. So I think that's a huge kind of allusion to mythology, and the fact that everything about this city is all about its religion and its foundation, and it's religious ecstasy. The
happiness.
Yeah, the happiness, the bliss of having a religion as its core. So, like Lauren said, despite the fact that Hurricane Katrina was a tragedy, in kind of a more under the surface, underlying way, it was a way to clean out the bad and baptize the city back to its original form.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely personifies, in this line, he said, "Army of Cyprus." He personifies the natural parts of the city, and the unnatural ones he kind of gives, or he pairs with awful adjectives, and, kind of just pushing them off aside, and he's kind of, putting these natural aspects and religious aspects of New Orleans or of the Crescent City up on a pedestal because he believes those are pretty important to the culture of the city. So
nice. Thanks so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you guys for watching.
Did.